Well, good day to you, Mr. Warren. I decided that you probably might be wanting to hear from Missy Hoolihan to read your hands. But then I'd be thinking, the lady is now in a third or fourth generation of Missy Hoolihans, and she probably do not have the Irisher dialect anymore. And then I thought, perhaps it is the wild gypsy woman, the woman who comes into town and reads hands and then disappears the next day. Perhaps it would be her that you would like to hear from and tell you not just what your free will would do, but to tell you your fortune. And I decided, no, you are much too fine a gentleman. Much too fine a gentleman, and you do read voices, as you say. So I suspect you would like the higher class lady, a woman who would read your hands and your tea leaves in a fine parlor with a music room and artwork all on the walls. But of course, that's not really who I am. So I guess it'll have to just be me. I'm Georgia. To begin with, today is Sunday, July 29th, 2012. It's 3:17 p.m. Now I am here in Syracuse, New York. But you are in Aurora. I am not quite sure which location we really would be consider this reading to be held at. So I will give you both of those. I always time and place stamp each recording so that if someday, 5 or 10 years from now, you say, this strange lady read my hands. And she was right. I think it must have been a very special day, and I must check with a fancy astrologer. Well, an astrologer would just be devastated if they didn't know the time and the place and everything exactly. So I always timestamp my readings. Now we will begin. I've looked at your hands. I've looked at both of them. Your right hand is dominant, or so you say, and your left hand is non-dominant. Your left hand is the life you planned, and I think we talked about this in an email. It doesn't matter at all whether you think that your plan was given by a great God and it was laid down for you. Or in some past life you just did something really, really wrong. And this life is karma. You could believe that too. Or you were floating in the stream between lives and decided, last time I was a blind beggar in Bombay with no legs. And the time before that I was king of some phenomenal country. I think this time I'll be David Warren. I don't know. You could have just been a little kid lying in your bassinet and saying, this is what I want to be when I grow up. It doesn't matter. It's your belief systems, not mine. So I look at your left hand as your plan, and your right hand is what your free will, the free will of the people around you, the world, the changes in the world. The world changes. And we each are given changes on our dominant hand. The lines there change all the while. I saw a man once who came to me, and I looked at his hands, and he had a little bit of back problem that showed in his hand. I sent him off to another person at the same fair we were at. I think it was in Liverpool about 3 years ago. And a couple of hours he came back, and he's holding his hand up to me. He says, look, the line's already changing. I went to the guy over there. He gave me a massage. My back feels a lot better. And he told me what to do. And the line is already changing. Now, was that true? I don't know. But I know we work harder with our dominant hand. We hold things and balance them more with our non-dominant hand. And we work with our dominant hand. So they get more wrinkly and the lines change. Your hands are very different. Your non-dominant hand is a little bit more of what I thought it would look like, or what I thought the dominant hand would look like. You are definitely a right-brained person. The lines on your headline and on your lifeline meet up. This is the mark of a right-brained person. For years and years, I always called people like you heart people. I would say, your heart gets someplace 5 minutes before your head. Now your head catches up. It doesn't mean that you're a total ditz and that it never catches up. But your heart gets there first. Now, if those lines are separated, I used to call it a head person. Your head gets someplace 5 minutes before your heart. People with the lines separated are more analytical. They are what we now call left-brained. Now, it took me a long time to remember which was left-brained and which was right-brained, because I'm not only right-brained, but I am a tad dyslexic. And I just couldn't remember. But a year and a half or so ago, some scientists got together and they decided they were going to find out whether left-brainedness and right-brainedness were nature or nurture. And they did. They did this big study, and the study was written up in the Journal of American Medical Association, and they were on the Today Show and on the news. But all anyone was interested in is that on that same gene there was another marker, and it was the same as what people who were reading hands and palms have been looking at for thousands of years, that if you were right-brained, the two lines matched up, and if you were left-brained, the two lines were separated. So now I have this one single fact that's true, and I can amaze people at parties. I can walk up to any stranger and look at their hands and say, "You're left-brained. I would assume that even your sock drawers are clean and all matched up. But you're not one of those. You're the right-brained person." And I still say, your heart gets someplace 5 minutes before your head. Now, that's the only fact I have. I have a factoid. There's another fact, but that has to do with men with A personalities. If your Saturn finger is extremely long, longer than it should be, in utero you received too much testosterone, and it seems to last a lifetime. And men who receive too much testosterone in utero end up with long Saturn fingers. They're not exactly what a lady would look for. They're a little mean. They're a little aggressive. They make great business leaders, but they're that super A personality. Now, I can't see the length of all your fingers, and I can't assume anything from that. You can look down now at your hands and decide whether you are a super A personality or not. I do have a factoid, but it's only a factoid. And it stems from all of the people, all of the hands that I have read since 1968. I've read hands for a long time. I have not as yet met one person in all those many years, and you can do the addition 1968 to 2012, something like that. I have not met one person whose lifeline on their dominant hand was shorter than their current age. Now, I meet about 2 or 3 people a week whose lifeline on their non-dominant hand is shorter than their current age, and they should have croaked, as it were, before I ever met them. Some of them, it's very close to the time that we meet, and they just had an accident or just got back from the hospital. But some of them, their lifelines disappeared at a very early age. One lady, I said, and you have to be very careful when you see these lines. You have to be very careful. You don't want to scare your client. Did something happen to you when you were very, very young? And she looked at me and she said, well, yes, dear. They always said I was born twice. When I was about 2 weeks old, my parents had me home from the hospital, and all of a sudden I stopped breathing and I turned purple. Well, my grandmother had just stopped by, and she picked me up and looked at my two parents, who were just being hysterical, and she ran me in the kitchen, put me in the sink, and started spraying cold water all over me. Well, that just shocked my system. Did something where it just startled me right back into life. So that was a lady with really no lifeline on her non-dominant hand. The first one, the very first person that had this interesting anomaly on their hands, was a long, long time ago, probably 1970. And she was very old. She was very, very old. But I was much younger then. And I looked at her hands, and I didn't know what I was looking at. And I said, and I remember her name now, it was Elsie. I said, Elsie. And I spoke a little loudly. Elsie, was there something that happened when you were young? And she says, well, yeah, so there was, hon. She called me hon, and I let her. There was, hon. When I was young, everybody always said, Elsie, you're gonna die. So I didn't do anything. I didn't go to school. I ate anything I wanted, never did what my parents said, and they always treated me good because Elsie was gonna die. And then one day my mom took me to the doc. Now, we didn't call them docs in those days. We called them Dr. Sir. But nowadays, we call them docs. Well, she took me to the doc, and the doc said, Elsie, if you're a good girl and you start going to school and you start eating right, I will give you a special medicine that's going to help you out. But you got to do everything. You got to exercise, and you got to take this medicine. Well, that was a long time ago. And I've been very good. I've been a good woman. And I've done it all right. Well, it seems that this was a long time ago. And they had invented, found, whatever it was in the 30s. But they had insulin. This lady was a type 1 diabetic. So she started taking the insulin, and she said, it wasn't like it is nowadays, honey. You didn't just test your blood. You had to test your pee. And she whispered it to me. So that was the very first person that I ever saw that had a shorter lifeline on their non-dominant hand. Remember, it's on the non-dominant hand. As I said, I've never met anyone who has a shorter lifeline on their dominant hand. Now you have about the same lifeline on both hands. There is nothing terribly special about your lifelines. Why anyone would ever look at it and say, oh, I can't tell you about your lifeline, sir. And run away. It's just not special. There's some very special things about your hands. Very special. First, we'll start with the shape of your hands. When I first wrote to you, I said I thought that they were probably had some knobbiness to them. Because knobbiness indicates, especially as one gets a little older, what's called the philosopher's hand shape. it usually starts out that their hands are creative handshake, that they are the creative people. But as they get older, they have theories on creativity. They have theories on their art forms, whether it's dance, singing, playing music, composing music, or writing. They start building theories, and they have philosophies, and their hands follow the shape into the philosopher's hand. Your dominant hand has more than one shape to it. They are not the same. And again, hands change. Hands change. You have what used to be called the hand shape of the worker. I've changed the name. They haven't changed it in the books, but they don't change much in books on palm reading, and they call it palm reading, and they only read the palm of the dominant hand, so there's no real difference between what your plan was and what your life is, because palm readers only see it as a snapshot of one thing, and that's why I like the old Hindu style. But your dominant hand has taken on what they call the worker's hand. Perhaps it's just because you do so much bloody work. But I call it the finisher. The finisher's hand. It's the hand shape that if I had a project, I'd give it to you. I would have no concern if you said, Georgia, I'm going to write a story and your deadline is the end of August. I would never question you. I would never think about it. I would just know that by the end of August, unless you had some question from me about what you thought the topic would be or something, I would never have any concern. I would just know that by the end of August, you would deliver and have something done on time, because I've seen the shape of your hand. So what have we done? We've gotten through maybe a line now. You have a nice long lifeline. And the shape of your hand. Now your fingerprints mean something, but the fingerprints were missing, and that's just as well, because I'm not sure how accurate fingerprints are. I have fingerprints that on my Jupiter finger says that I'm going to have great wealth through my career. Well, it ain't happened yet. Let's see. On your non-dominant hand, you have a separation between your mind line and your heart line. Your heart line on both hands goes in two directions. As far as a career, you can do what you love to do as a career. You can do what you absolutely love to do. But, as well as that, you can do what you need to do to get by. Your heart line goes in two directions. Now it's also the line for other heart things. Family, love, all of that stuff. It's well developed, it's deep, and your ability to love people is as well deep. You love hard, and when you're disappointed hard. Now that's on both hands as well. Now there's a very different thing on your dominant hand, though. Your dominant hand, and most of the things in your non-dominant hand are good. Your mind line, it's just what I said in our email, that your mind line goes deeply toward the mound of Pluto. Pluto is that place the furthest from the sun, and it's the deepest part of us. It's what you might call the unconscious's unconscious. You might also call it psychic ability, intuition, imagination, or talent. You could call it that spark that has no definition. So I thought that would be there, and so it is. You have strong lines on both hands for angels. You have angels with you. Now, you can call them spirit guides or inner beings. I never really put my belief system on anyone else. I call them interplanetary beings because I don't know what they are. For the most part, because you know how I feel about many things, I think they're probably me. I think they are the deepest resources that I have. But for people who believe in angels, they are angels. For people who believe they are spirit guides, they can be a big gray wolf that sits on the kitchen cupboard and growls at them when they eat too much. But you have some well-developed lines there as well. You have lots of friends. You're lucky. And when I say lots, I can't tell specifically because the picture's not that good. But not millions. But you have friends that you can reach out to and that you can bring into your lifeline. They reach as far as your lifeline. These friends can be relatives or they can be friends, but they come as far as your life. It's almost a shame when I know a little bit too much about a person or know them at all. Most of the people that I read for are complete strangers. You mentioned recently that a man gave you an old car to drive around, so you had a car to drive. That person reached through the barriers to your lifeline. I had a friend like that once. I have a TV now. I allowed someone to give me a TV. It's the first TV I may have ever had. I watch way too much TV now because it's as though it's just been invented a couple of years ago. So I have a tendency to watch a movie and just go, oh my gosh. And I can watch old Star Trek movies when they're on. But that's another story. Now we get to the thing that jumped out the moment I looked at your hands. And there was one thing. There's always one thing. There's always one thing. On your dominant hand, go ahead, look. On your dominant hand, all of your lines connect. Your lifeline connects with your headline. Your heart line, if you look at it, it branches out into one part of your headline goes directly to your Jupiter finger, and we talked about that. That's your passion for doing what you love, how you feel the most satisfied when you're doing what you love. But you can see that other part of your headline that comes right down into your headline. And it's connected there. Now, if it weren't connected, all it would really indicate is that you can do anything you need if you have to make a living. And I'm sure that you have, and you probably will. But when they're all connected, it means that all the parts of your personality are connected. That you have gone a place where very few people ever do, where you are fully connected on all levels. Your life and your mind and your heart and your fate, and we haven't gotten to your fate line yet, and your fate are all connected. Your lifeline and your fate line are so well connected that it would seem as though there was a time probably in your 40s, when you reached a stage of your life where your life became connected with your internal journey. Now, I don't know what that means. I do not know what that means. You know what it means. It means that there was that time when you felt possibly that no matter what came or went, you weren't going to give up on who you were at the core of your being. It may mean something altogether, but all of a sudden, your lifeline and your fate line. Your fate line is more than just a fortune teller thing. It's your soul line, sort of. We can call it your soul line. It's that sort of thing. It's where I look at to see betrayals and sadnesses on folks' hands. Your fate line seems, from the piece of paper that I have in front of me, to stop. It goes through your lifeline, and it goes up through your mind line, and it stops. And if you look at it, now look at your hand, it connects beautifully in that spot where your heart line breaks off into a fork. It seems like it doesn't go that much further in any great strength, so that your heart, your mind, and all of the things that have connected you into this one personality, this one strongly singular personality, this singularity of consciousness meeting unconsciousness, that they all meet. They meet and allow you to, what you might call, think out of the box. I don't know. There are, if you believe in past lives, several past lives that show on your hand that connect to this life. If you look at your mind line, you can see there's a connection that goes all the way around the side of your hand. It looks like your mind line does that, but actually your mind line dips down, and it's one of your past lives that creep around the side of your hand and catch up with it. And there's a couple of other places where your past lives catch up with your mind. Now, it's silly to think that those could possibly be times when you drift away and imagine stories from years that are semi-prehistoric and there were 400-pound beavers. But it's possible if such things are something that's within your belief system. Now we've come fairly close to about all I can say about your hands. When you do let something bother you, when something does creep through on your fate line and makes it past your lifeline, your mind line, your heart line, when it gets up there, it does keep going and go right through up into your Saturn finger itself. And from the way I read hands, that means you can take a sadness all the way to your soul. All the way to your soul. It allows you a depth of feeling that, although can be joyous when it's good, can wrench your heart out when it's sad. Okay, well, that's enough of the sad part. You don't seem to have much of a medical stigmata, so I hope you never wanted to be a medical doctor. You certainly do not have a left brain, so even if everybody else in the family is in the law business, it's a good thing you didn't try. It would have been an uphill battle the whole time, and it would never have been something that would have made you happy, in my opinion. Yeah, all of these things, you've got to realize that I should be saying, and I do at fairs, I'm much more careful than sitting here all by myself with the two printouts of a person's hands. I'm supposed to say, could be, might, and maybe. I'm very careful about that because could be. It could be none of these things seem appropriate for your life. You have a very well-developed Mars finger. That's your thumb. When you got money, you take care of it. Your mound of Venus. On your dominant hand, your mound of Venus is very well developed. Again, it might be just work. But on your non-dominant hand, in the second part of your life, it's somewhat well developed, but in the first part of your life, it is deflated as if there was going to be no love, no depth of feeling until you became quite old. On your non-dominant hand, looks like you had a real possibility of having some severe back problems. It looks like you did something about that. You did something. You dodged the bullet, or I'm just not seeing it right, because it does not look as though the severe back problems ever even materialized. I do not read children lines, even though they show in this hand. The hands show. I did a 2-year study with postmenopausal women, and children lines are pretty much bogus. I did the study because I have no children, and I have children lines on my hand. Let's see, what else can I tell you? No matter what's ever happened to you, your humor lines, there are humor lines, have never been covered up. No matter what's happened to you. Some people, in fact most people as they get older, it's as though someone took a fingernail or a fingernail file or an X-Acto knife and just slashed their humor to bits. That hasn't happened to you. You know that you have a writer's stigmata on your hand. You may not have a medical stigmata. I'd be careful if you even got a sliver in your hand from your medical stigmata. It's not very good at all. But the writer's stigmata, that's very strong. It's very strong. The other sign of flexibility is in your thumb. And I say the other sign because I'm talking about flexibility when I'm telling you that although you need to do the career you love, but you can do the job you need all your life and not sacrifice either one. You also have flexible thumbs. From what I can see, you have what they call a hitchhiker's thumb. Now, it may be from the arthritis. I don't know. I'd have to look at your hands in person, but it looks as though you have what's called a hitchhiker's thumb, and it means that you're flexible. So you can do one thing one day, one thing another. I must say I have a fairly flexible hand myself. And I think, as best as I can, this is about the end of our reading. Stay healthy. Keep doing all the things that you're doing now. Stay connected with your fate. Stay connected with your fate. Because your life depends on that. At this point, your life depends on all of this interconnection, on this interconnection with consciousness, unconsciousness, your heart, your mind, your life, and your fate. If you can get into the idea of past lives, put yourself in a nice state of meditation and look backwards to other lives after lives after lives. And note that there's a myriad of them on your hands that are connected to this one. They might make for some nice stories. Peace, my friend.